being in atheism. Now, I know I said that about Notes from Autumn. So we have a little bit of a fierce competition here. Who is going to be the next Shannon Q? Is it going to be Erin or Autumn? So you watch today, and you guys be the judge. Welcome, please, Erin. Oh my God! Oh my God, it's Erin! Hi, Erin. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. So welcome to my channel. Did you watch that chat with me and Notes from Autumn? You're friends with her, right?
I am friends with her. Yeah. Yeah, I did watch it.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, it was good. So I noticed that you were on you've been on Twitter. Tell us who you are first and what you do and why you are on Twitter, and you do not have a YouTube channel yet, right?
Not yet.
Okay. So tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Erin, and I have had a Twitter account for actually coming up on close to a year. I share on there my journey of leaving Christianity, and I started off just kind of venting, and now I try to have good conversations on there, and I've done a few interviews, and I'm sort of working on possibly maybe sort of starting a YouTube channel. It's a little bit tricky though, because I've got kids at home.
Okay. So you became an atheist more than few years ago though, right? Or are you recently an atheist? Or how did that work?
I somewhere around August of last year, so 2019 is when I kind of realized that I was no longer a believer.
Oh, you're that recently an atheist. So you got on Twitter almost right away.
I started the Twitter account in so it was August that I kind of realized that. And then I started my Twitter in October, but I don't think I started posting until January. And then just pretty quickly, it got more popular, and I had lots of things going on the Twitter. So I just kept on posting, and there's a lot of people on there who connected with what I was posting.
So why do you think did you kind of blow up do you probably have how many followers do you have roughly?
Around 4,500. I haven't checked
So
it.
so you kind of blew up quick, because I've been on Twitter for something like 4 years, and I only have like 3,000 or so. So what do you think? What did you start to do Twitter for? Just to mouth off about religion, or?
Maybe initially, yes. I part of my deconversion story is that I had that kind of angry deconstructor phase where I needed somewhere to express my frustration. So I got on Twitter initially just anonymously, and I started kind of posting my some of the pain that I was experiencing going through my deconstruction and deconversion. And then what was the question? Why did it blow up? I think people just
identify with where you're at.
Yeah. And I do post a lot of quite personal stuff. I try to really get to the introspection of what it feels like and what the experience is like. And also then looking backwards, because I kind of deconstructed, and then in retrospect, looked back on my experience as a Christian, and I comment a lot about that too, and kind of where I saw harm done in that. And so clearly there's a lot of people who have also had that experience, because that's, I think, the biggest draw to my channel or to my account.
So people resonate with the stuff you're posting, and they identify with basically the journey that you went through. Is that fair to say? Is that kind of what you meant?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So the introspection is why you're here. I think I heard you on Seth Andrews' channel, and I thought you actually, told your story really, what would I say, really eloquently, or in a way that's easy to hear and listen to and identify with. So that's more or less why you're here. Because that I have a lot of interviews with atheists, and a lot of them are focused on their deconversion stories. Sometimes it's other stuff, but that's a huge thing that I'm interested in. So let's start from the beginning. What type of Christian did you start out as? And tell me wherever you think is the most interesting place to start.
Okay. I was born into a Christian family. Both my parents were Christian. They were separated or eventually divorced. But so my mom, shortly after she split up with my birth dad, she got involved with the Pentecostal church. So I kind of split my time between the Pentecostal church and my dad's Baptist church. And then on extension of that, my extended family was mostly Presbyterian. So I spent like, I had a well-rounded view of the different churches in town.
Right. Those are all different. Like those.
It could not be more opposite.
Right. They don't mix well with each other, right?
No.
Like Pentecostal, I've gone to, who have I gone to? Like someone like Joyce Meyer. Do you consider that Pentecostal?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So is that what you mean by Pentecostal? Like,
I think in the younger years, so I will say that the Pentecostal church is kind of what I've said is like, that's the theology that stuck. That's the one that really spoke to me the most. It's also the one I just spent the most time in because I did live with my mom most of the time. So I spent more time at that church. So the message there is kind of, I think, what I would have identified with most as a Christian, especially for the first 20 years. I think things didn't change a little bit after my 20s, and there's a little bit of a story there as well. But yeah, experiential, like the music, there was a lot of, I did go to a small church that did have some kind of more crazy moments. It was a charismatic church. So there was a lot of dancing and jumping and speaking in tongues and prophecy and faith healing and that sort of thing. It was a very,
so you actually participated in all that type of stuff, correct?
Yes.
And at the time were you a really committed Christian? I mean, I know there's a timeline where probably that's true at some parts and not others, but in general, were you really fervent? You were really like on fire, or how would you describe yourself?
I think exactly what you said. Like it kind of ebbed and flowed. I did believe like with all my heart. I was very, very passionate. And then especially during certain times in my life, especially when I was, involved in like the church camps and that sort of thing. I kind of went through phases where I was really intense about it. I got a lot more intense about it when I was about 16 or 17, and I had about 3 or 4 years where I would explain it as like my most intense period, where I was like a camp counselor, and then I actually did like a year of missions, and then I did a year of Bible college, and like I was giving it my all for sure.
So this is the high school years. And did you go to Christian high school, or were you homeschooled?
No, I
or
didn't.
Something like that?
No, I was in a public school.
And how did you negotiate that? Did you like date and go hang out and drink with regular kids? Did you think they were sinners and going to hell? Or did you preach against them and stuff?
I was really concerned for them. I actually had a boyfriend in high school that was not a Christian, and then he became a Christian later on in life, but not with me. But I spent a lot of time trying to like witness to my friends.
Was he trying to treat you like a normal girl, right? And how did you negotiate the, how do I say this delicately? Like he was trying to hook up with you. He was trying to get somewhere.
I've spoken very fondly of my high school boyfriend. He was a sweetheart. He never ever tried to push me beyond where I was like, oh, these are my limits as a Christian. I will never go. And he was great about it. I don't know how I lucked out with that. I dated him throughout pretty well all through high school, so I think that was a good thing. But I didn't drink. I didn't go to parties. I was always friends with everybody. I was friends with the secular kids at the church, at the school. But I also had a huge kind of Christian community. Most of the kids in my small town were Christian. We just all went to different churches. So I would explain my high school experience as me trying to convince the Baptist and the Presbyterian kids that they were wrong and they were going to hell.
They were going to hell too.
Yeah.
And did you honestly believe this? Did you honestly think like, did you think like your boyfriend was, in trouble if he were like, you honestly believe that on some level, right?
I absolutely believed it. And I also believed my dad was going to hell too, because he was a Baptist.
Right. See, that's got to kind of gnaw at
it was really intense. Yeah.
Okay. Just to give you my background so you understand how I was raised. I was totally secular. We were raised sort of nominally Roman Catholic. Like we go to church on Christmas and Easter, but I wasn't expected to believe it. And I grew up in a suburb of New York City. So it was an upper middle class, like fairly wealthy, well-educated suburb, really secular, a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking, basically like any town USA at the time, but just a little bit, probably more secular. There was no such thing as a Christian in my town. There were people who were nominally X, but I did not know, and this occurred to me the other week, like I didn't know any evangelical. There were none in my town. There was no such thing as a witnessing Christian who would like, you go out drinking on the weekends and they tell you you're going to go to hell if you hang out with them on Monday. Because then I might have a different attitude towards Christians because I had no dog in the fight. Like I didn't think of them at all. And my wife thinks she was raised like you, but she was also raised in Westchester, and she thinks she was raised as a fundamentalist, but she wasn't. She went to parties and drank and had boyfriends and had sex and did all that type of stuff. So she thinks she was like, but she was the only person in her fold. It's a weird story. Okay, so now go ahead.
Majorly backslidden, hey?
Well, she was backslidden when I met her, and importantly so, because I was a really secular person. And I don't want to be too like explicit, but she was really sexual, like really like, wow. That was a big part of the attraction. I was like, oh my God, this girl is like crazy. Like she's very, very, very good looking. And it was like, that was a big part of it. And if she had been a Christian, she backslidden Christian at that point. And I didn't even know that she had been a Christian. She didn't start telling me that till about a year into our relationship. It was really weird. I was really into the new age. I'll just briefly tell you, this is a funny story.
Go ahead,
I was into the new age, and I was starting to think about God a lot, and I was starting to read a lot of different things because I'd been in and out of like recovery programs. And she tells me she wants to go to Benny Hinn. And I was like, oh, that sounds fun. I thought it was like a spiritual healer. I thought it was like, I didn't know what it was. I'd never heard of him. So I was like, oh, that's fun. You know, I think that'd be really good for you. Then she comes back from it and tells me that she rededicated her life to the Lord. And I had no idea what that meant. I was like, oh, that sounds great. You know, didn't know what she was talking about. Okay, your turn. Go ahead. I apologize.
Where am I?
So you are in a town. You are deeply Christian. The town itself is pretty Christian, right? It's a Bible Belt town. That's what I'm thinking.
I would say so, yeah.
So there wasn't the partying and the drinkers and the boozers isn't really of the same level as suburbs of New York already, I'm guessing. Right?
No, there were definitely, like, I grew up in a smaller town in the prairies, like in Canada. So there was definitely drinking, but it was more like drinking out of boredom because we didn't have a lot to do.
Right, okay.
And I think I attended a couple of kind of like backyard, like kind of, it was more like a, what do you call those? Like a tailgate kind of parties is what happened in my town. Right. I went to a couple. I didn't drink. I didn't even have my first alcoholic drink until I was in Bible college.
Wow. Wait, you went to Bible college?
Yeah, I did.
So, okay. So did you want to like be an evangelist or preacher or? Okay.
So somewhere around grade 12, I started to have kind of that pullback that I hadn't like. So me and the boyfriend broke up, and then I realized that I had in those years had just not been as fervent in my faith. So the church I grew up in was very much it was very intense. You're either hot or cold. So it's like there's no such thing as a lukewarm Christian who's going to go to heaven. So I had felt very guilty about my lukewarm period throughout high school because I wasn't doing anything blatantly bad according to my faith. I just wasn't as excited about it all. Yeah. Right. So when I was like 17, I don't think anything really happened. I think I just felt, I guess you would describe it as like I felt convicted. Yeah. Convicted. And I also kind of felt like my relationship had ended, and maybe that was God trying to tell me that like I need to focus more on my faith. So I rededicated, like your wife, I kind of rededicated my life to God. And then I joined a missions team. I decided I was going to spend my first year out of high school doing missionary work. So I did that. And that team was an experience for me. It was really fun, but it was also like horrible at the same time because did you say? Yeah. Okay. I love doing the volunteer work. I love doing the outreach. I played bass guitar on the worship band. We did like worship and
cool.
Are you good? No, I'm terrible, but I love it.
Oh, that would have been a killer, like coda to the story. Like you're a great bass player.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm secretly a rock star. No, I've always liked music, and I kind of taught myself guitar throughout my teen years. So when it came to the missions team, we were doing street ministry and different kinds of evangelism, volunteer work, like and so we were doing community stuff for the most part. For the first half of the team, we were doing community work, and we were training ourselves, or we were training to go overseas at the end. So we were kind of practicing in Canada, preparing to go overseas. And we had a music and drama team. I think dramas was a really big thing back in like the early 2000s. So we had at that point, they just needed a bass player. So I was like, I kind of can play guitar. So I actually learned bass guitar. And then 3 days later, I was playing it at my first worship service. Like,
oh my God, that's hilarious.
It was yeah, really nerve wracking. So the team was in a lot of ways a lot of fun, but it was also a very, like what I would look back now calling like a very high control group. So even though I had quite a few restrictions on my life already, like I had my boundaries, this team pushed it way farther. Like, so that was we weren't allowed to listen to anything secular. We weren't really supposed to have any kind of it kind of reminds me a little bit of what I hear about from like Mormon missionaries. Like, it's just, you're supposed to be totally cut off. You're supposed to be really focused on your team, hours and hours and hours of Bible study every day, hours and hours of praying. And also the leaders were they were also young, and we had an overseer that was part of the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, but they didn't really interact with us on a daily basis. So I think normal youth or young adult stuff happened, and there was a lot of bickering and a lot of kind of power trip control over the other people at the teams. And so that kind of, I think, caused me to feel like a little bit
so they were trying to really, there was a culty aspect.
It was kind of culty, yeah.
Trying to control. They were trying to control your behavior ostensibly for righteous reasons. So you were living more in line with what the Bible actually teaches, right?
Yeah.
Because I honestly think that you can make a case that the Bible is teaching people to have that type of commitment, but it's got to be from the person. It's got to be organic to the person. It's not something you can force another person into, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's why I have very mixed feelings about pressuring people to, you know, I mixed feelings, meaning like I wouldn't go near it. I wouldn't go near pressuring people to, like, I don't even know what they pressured you to, what they pressured you to do. Probably something really annoying.
Yeah, it was kind of annoying. Part of it was like, okay, I get it. We're like supposed to be like in a discipleship training thing, but there was just, it ended up being kind of like, when you have a small group like that and you're really told to spy on each other and to tattle on each other, you end up with a lot of secrecy. And so there was a lot of...
end up actually breeding hypocrisy, right?
Yeah,
because,
and I
because
honestly...
you're going to do... And what's the rough age? 23 years old?
Oh, not even. It was like everybody... I was 17 when I joined it because I graduated when I was 17. I turned 18 on the team. So 18 to 21, it was quite young. And like the leaders were 21.
Right. So you're going to have natural curiosity where you're going to do things that are quote unquote sinful or check this out. And that's normal part of growing up. Yeah. So then you're just going to try to hide it from the group and pressure other people.
So at this point, I was so committed to it that I became like kind of like the police person on the team. I was so concerned about everybody else breaking the rules. Nice. I had because I followed the rules. I had a journal, and I still have it. And I think that's another one of the moments that my Twitter kind of went like, because I was like, oh, I found my journals, because I'd kind of forgotten I had them. And one of my journals was just my journaling from that year on the team. And I would say at least a third of it is just filled with me lamenting over the sexual sin on my team, because people were having secret relationships or like they were just lying. And I was so worried about them. And there was a lot of prayers in that journal to combat that. I was very upset.
So you were actively interceding for them because they weren't living up to, like, so you were like the Nurse Ratched, and you were like, these people don't know Christianity. Let me show them. But you weren't in their face aggressively. Like, were you one of those like in your face type Christians? So you were just secretly like praying, agonizing over there.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting though. Okay, so tell me when the deconversion. This is really interesting, but we could get stuck here.
I know it's complicated. I'll jump ahead a little bit here. So
I get
at the end of the team,
see, in order to fully elucidate all the different complexities of the story, it would take us probably 7 hours to go.
I think the most important part about this recalling of this team was that was the first time on my team where I had really felt some hypocrisy for people who would say one thing and then act a different way. And the other thing is that I was the first time I'd been in a small group setting and really had intimate time, like spiritually intimate time with people who came from different backgrounds. And so that's when the conversations, like the theological conversations, started coming up. So right from that team, I decided to go to Bible college because I felt like I need to have a better understanding of my theology if I'm going to be like an effective missionary. And that was my initial plan. I wanted to go into missionary work of some sort.
Right. But so you're really a committed Christian at this point.
Yeah.
So this is like, you're not doing other things.
No.
Because you're so committed to what you think is how did you view it? Did you really view God was calling you to do this? This was your thing in life, or were you not really looking deeply at it? I mean, that's a weird question.
I did feel,
tell the story.
I think I have a kind of an innate sense that like I do like to help other people, and I think that that's part of like the reason of why I'm doing what I do now. On my platform, I guess. I just had a bit of a drive, I think, to go out and be helpful and useful. And I felt like when I read the scriptures, that was what was the clearest message that I was getting, was that I needed to dedicate everything to, evangelizing and to spreading the gospel.
Right.
So I just took it really seriously.
Those who lay down their life for my sake will find it. I mean, that is the clear message of the scriptures.
Yeah,
I just don't think it should be imposed by. That's something generated from within.
I can honestly say that no one ever told me I needed to do any of these things. It came from me because my parents were, they didn't care what I was going to do. Like I could have gone off to university. I could have, got married right away, or they were like, you just follow your heart. And so they were supportive of me throughout these things. So I went off to Bible college, and then I think I experienced my first really big moments of doubt when I was in Bible college.
Okay. So this is where good girl goes bad. Let's hear it. Lay it on.
Not, I guess so. I think there's two things going on. One was that I was being confronted with some of the, how the sausage is made kind of stuff of Christianity. Like, this is how the Bible came together. And I was like, what? Stuff that you weren't. That's stuff, through you. Okay. Yeah, stuff that you're not really taught in Sunday school. So learning about hermeneutics and exegesis and trying to read the scripture in context, and it kind of just didn't feel nearly as clear to me as it did growing up. And then also at the Bible college, you do meet more people from different denominations. So I just had felt a lot. I think at that point I was just like, I'm not sure if Pentecostalism is true, because I was like a Pentecostal more than almost anything. Like I was a Christian, yeah, but I was specifically in the right type of Christian. So that kind of started to shake that. And I think that I did go through some sort of a bit of a deconstruction of my particular denomination that I grew up with at that point.
I mean, I'm guessing that is inevitable if you are somewhat aware and open-minded, because some of the presuppositions you're carrying around with you are going to just be directly challenged by a person who you're like, wait, this person is going to hell because why exactly? And then so you start automatically questioning. That's a normal process, and that's actually a really healthy process. And I don't necessarily think Christians should avoid that. So deconstruction, I'm totally on board with.
Yeah, totally. So,
and if it leads you to deconversion, I mean, so be it. But deconstruction, I'm totally on board with. Go ahead. I think it's normal and healthy is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that I didn't know there were that wasn't a term that I would have called it 13 years ago. But that is what was happening. So I got to Bible college. I was there for a year. And then I decided I just need to take a break. I was a little bit burned out from the missionary work and then the Bible college. And I also have a lot of health issues. I have a chronic illness. So I felt like I needed to just take a little break. And then, and then I moved also across the country because I was like, I'm just going to go on a little sabbatical kind of.
Weird. Where'd you move? What do you mean? You
Canada's a big country. I just moved to the West Coast. I actually landed on Vancouver Island for a couple of years.
Oh, you didn't drive across country though. You just
I actually literally did drive across the country with my guitar.
Yeah,
I was,
that's what I thought you meant. That's
yeah.
really awesome. I knew a couple people did that in
I
college.
picked up and I drove all the way to the West Coast with my guitar, just thinking I just needed a reset button. And so I did that. I moved out here.
So that's kind of an action of a free spirit, and a free spirit isn't exactly the this is just an observation.
Yeah.
Free spirit, that's something that like some of my hippie friends did when I
Yeah.
was in college. Like my friend Amy, who I love, but she was like a druggy, like hippie crazy person, drives across the country. That's a very different type of action than the person who is, trying to really hungry serve the Lord. So there's some sort of dichotomy there.
There
right?
was totally a dichotomy, and I think even when I look back on those years, like and it's like very reflected in my journal, like I struggled the whole time, because I think I have like I'm either all in or I'm all out kind of personality. And so I was either gonna, the only way to tame my free spirit type nature was to commit 1,000% to my faith,
right?
and
To yield to it.
yeah,
I
and
totally
then,
understand that.
and
I was
that
sort of
caused
similar when I
me,
was young.
yeah, and that caused me to kind of get burned out, and it obviously caused me to that part of me that's like just the natural questioner and the natural, I think honestly the natural doubter. I think I was trying to suppress that by going so hard in my faith.
Oh, yo, that's
Yeah.
probably true.
Yeah.
It never even occurred to me.
Yeah.
Because that's one of my operating theories about people who are rigid in their, doesn't really matter, even if you could be Christianity. I find this true of hardcore, liberals, hardcore Republicans, anybody who's really, really rigid and dogmatic. I tend to automatically think that they're trying
struggling.
Because that's why they're like that, because they're not that convinced and they want to be. So they're generating up fervency in themselves that is inauthentic to where they're actually at. Is that fair to say?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I know if I jump ahead a little bit, when I look back before I like deconverted, my strongest, I would say personally, where I felt the most convinced or the most intense about it was actually 4 years ago, right before I started deconstructing. Like I think I was coming up on some sort of a fork in the road, and I tried again to become very fervent about it. And I had about a year where I gave it my all again. And then it was the following year that I started kind of deconstructing, and then I was out.
Interesting. Okay, so tell me about the deconstruction. And you feel free to slow down. If need be, you can come back again and finish the story. Tell me what's the most.
There's so much to the story. Yeah.
I know. I got that immediately.
I'm basically skipping my 20s because I moved to BC. I got involved with a guy at the church. I got married, got divorced. Like there's more to the story.
What? I'd say that's a pretty big piece. Yeah. Got married, got divorced. Oh, no big deal.
I will just say the takeaway from that was that I was involved in purity culture, and I tried to do everything God's way, and I felt very disillusioned by the fact that he did not deliver on his promises. That was how I framed it back then. And
really God, wait, you felt let down personally by God?
This is that what back then, yeah. I at that time I'd felt very much like I had done the things, I checked the lists, and I believed really strongly in the promises of saving yourself and being a biblical woman. And then I ended up in a relationship that was really unhealthy for 3 years. And then when I broke that off, there was like a big downpour of judgment from people, because they were like, that I was the one that was, so it kind of got turned around on me. So I had a moment where I had to take a step back, but it didn't destroy my faith. I just felt, again, I went through a period of deconstruction. So now I was deconstructing.
Let me just make sure I got that right, because this is what I heard. Okay.
Yeah.
You you're being delicate about a couple words, but you probably didn't really mess around before marriage at all sexually, out of respect for Christianity. And then
very little.
Very little. Okay. And then you married somebody who was active in the church or something like that, who was religious. Yeah. And it didn't work out. And you were disillusioned because you felt like you lived up to the obligations from your end, and God not necessarily owed you a good marriage, but where's my pot of rainbow type thing?
Yeah.
Where's the promises fulfilled because you did your part? And then the church people weren't empathetic at all. They turned around and judged you and were hypocrites and betrayed you and basically threw you under the bus. Right?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
pretty much correct?
and even some members of my own family, they came at with a lot of really.
Why did they side with you? Was he like this supposedly upstanding person or something?
They sided with him because I was the one who ended the relationship.
Oh, so they were mad that you got a divorce?
Yeah,
And
I was breaking
and
covenant.
Christians don't do that? Is that the deal?
Yeah, I was asking for an unbiblical divorce because I didn't have a biblical reason for wanting a divorce.
And what was the actual reason? Where he was just like,
without
trashing his
without trashing him.
He's a total douchebag, Greg. I can't stand him. He was hell on earth. I hate him. Without any
it wasn't what I was expecting. He maybe wasn't forthright about himself or his habits, we'll just say. I don't know. I don't have any interest in destroying his. I mean, I'm sure people could somehow figure out who he is because he's moved on with his life now too. But I was just extraordinarily unhappy, and I felt lied to by him and lied to by kind of what I was taught marriage was about, and so I had it was just horrible. I think looking back on myself, I had probably my most emotionally turbulent time when I was with him. It was just it wasn't good. And also again with my health issues, my health struggled a lot the whole time we were together. I was sick pretty well that whole
emotional
time.
Turmoil is going to dramatically increase your physical illness. Those two go hand in hand. So you're under stress. You're probably also not getting as much sleep. A lot of things are tying into that. So you had a really intense wilderness period, let's call it. That's what a Christian
I think
would
so.
say.
So then I came out of that, again, under this framework of deconstructing. I deconstructed purity culture. Again, it didn't rock my faith. I was just like, oh, I think purity culture might have been kind of bad hermeneutics.
Right, because purity culture was basically demanding of you, purity. Okay. I mean, okay, so move us forward.
Move us forward.
So seeds have been planted of not necessarily lack of belief. There's seeds of resentment towards hypocrisy about Christians, and a lot of stuff is going on. It's really, really complicated, right? It
is so complicated.
Right. Okay.
There's absolutely not one single thing that I could be like, this is it. This is what blew up my faith. It was like a 15-year process, I would say.
Right. But this is all real. I everything you're telling me, I honestly believe, and I think it honestly helped. There's a whole story here. That's why, I don't have anything to tell you. There's a whole story here. Go on.
Yeah. So
this is good, is what I'm saying. This is real. I'm with you. I totally listening, and I'm getting a lot out of this. Okay, so I'm getting insights that I did not have, and that's part of the reason why I ask people, these questions. So go ahead.
Okay. So I think my deconstructions of my faith, so not just different doctrines or denominations, but the actual faith started about
the actual core.
Yeah, started about 3 years ago, and for me, I context. I just had my second baby, so I had my son, who's 4 now. I had my son. I had another big health struggle. My husband and I started a business. There was a lot of going on contextually that caused me. I was having a lot of emotional and mental health issues, so I was really anxious. I had struggled.
Your husband and your new husband and you started a business?
So I've been with my husband, my current and hopefully forever husband for 10 years. We have 2 kids. And so we moved about 5 years ago to open a business, ended up having our son. So it was our second one. And it was all happening in kind of at once. It wasn't necessarily, timetable was a little iffy, but it was great. He's awesome. So there was a lot going on, and I was stressed, and I had gone through a little bit of depression after I had had my son. And so I had been seeking out some help for my mental health, and I had got, and I do want to
Is
say,
this
like,
depression, anxiety? Like, you don't have to be too
yeah. So
specific.
I had struggled with anxiety specifically
Okay.
for, I think I was diagnosed around the same time that I was diagnosed with my other health issues. So as a teenager, so I struggled with anxiety a lot. But then I had these periods of depression. And that was kind of new for me, like longer periods of depression. And I had got connected with a counselor, and that counselor also connected me to some support groups, and we did cognitive behavioral therapy group. I don't know if yeah.
Yes, I do.
And it was actually during that group that I had started to really question why the cognitive behavioral therapy was so much more helpful than prayer. That was kind of
interesting.
one
Okay.
of the early things that I had struggled with, because it felt very counter to what I had been taught as a Christian. And some of the things that I was starting to experience as helpful and actually improving my mental health, to me, they countered what I felt. Like I said, like they countered what I felt about myself, my beliefs that I had about myself.
Was
as a
anybody
Christian.
helping you, like Christian wise? Like, were you crying out to God? And were there? I know these people are rare, and apparently they're nowhere in any church.
No,
But was there
yeah.
anybody who was like kind of like helpful as a Christian, like
Yeah,
that you could go to and at least talk to, and they'd pray for you and like make you feel like better?
Yeah, so my mom is a really strong Christian. She was
Okay.
there for me. And then also the church that we were going to had they're actually an amazing church. They had a whole outreach ministry, and they had people that were ready all the time to come in. So I did actually have somebody, like a liaison type person. I can't remember what her position is called. But she was ready at my, I could text her, I could email her, we would go for coffee. She's actually, and even this church, they had like a really good program to help pay for counseling. So like,
how's your mom with your deconversion? Just out of curiosity.
She I feel like she probably isn't fully aware of it, honestly. She knows that I've struggled, and I think in past, like when I was going through my divorce, we'd talked about it, and I think she's known that I've struggled for a long time. It's just not something that we talk about very much right now. I think it would be really, we don't really talk about it.
Be hard on her. Yeah, no, I understand. That's, a lot of families solve things in that way, and I think it's actually smarter and wiser, because you don't really want to dig up a whole bunch of hard to reconcile issues between you and a person you love, because it causes problems. Sometimes it's better to just, like, I call it healthy hypocrisy. If your kid is like smoking weed and you don't approve, you kind of look the other way and pretend you minimize it and still trying to love them out of it. But you don't really want to. There's something very human about that, I think. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think we just put our relationship first for the most part. So
right.
There's been a few times where we've had some conversations, like because she's my stepdad. They've been together since I was 4. My stepdad and I have argued a few times, but my mom usually steps in, and she just wants everybody to just be kind. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't asked her point blank how she feels about it all. I think she would probably feel very sad. Based on our past conversations. Yeah.
And she's really into it. So she'd be upset.
I would still say that she and my stepdad are both charismatic type Christians. They believe in spiritual.
And she might actually legitimately be worried about your eternal destiny. Is that a real? Would she?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay, so that would freak her out.
Yeah. They believe in spiritual warfare, and they believe in, and that was probably my opinion too.
I believe in a lot of the stuff they believe in too,
yeah.
But I'm not really all that worried about your eternal destiny.
Yeah,
really not. I don't think you're going to be on a lake of fire forever and ever. Really
yeah, they believe in the traditional views of hell, and they believe in being, deceived by Satan, and so I think. Especially right now with everything else going on, I think we're both kind of like, let's just not talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So the real deconversion is now taking place. There's a second struggle, which is like a powerhouse emotional turmoil period of your life. Let's say 3 years, I think you said, having to do with, you got exposed to a lot, like hypocrisy in the church. You were abandoned by, you felt like purity culture is a total lie. You bought into it completely. And probably part of the, I'm just guessing, I don't know anything about purity
No, I'll stop you if you're wrong.
Okay, this is a guess.
Yeah.
Probably one of the scams they ran was that if you do this, sex is going to be so great with your husband when you finally have it, it's going to be so worth it. And it was probably really bad because you actually have to, you really have to practice a lot to get to know
I would say like, yes, but that also is like a caricature of the whole relationship not being very good. Like,
right. If you're not interacting with I mean, you can have a sexual relationship with somebody.
It wasn't for lack of effort. It was we tried, but there was just really no connection there. We
right.
And then, I mean, on top of that, I think that one thing alone, like sexual incompatibility, is something that could probably be overcome. But in our case, there was a lot of dishonesty.
In other ways.
Yeah, there was a lot of dishonesty with him about who he was as a person. So I mean, we had a really short engagement. We were married. It was a typical, like, we met each other, engaged, married, all within like 10 months. So when we moved in, it was just like, who are you? And we struggled for 3 years, and I was like, nope, it's just you're not at all the person that I want to be with for the rest of my life. So
wow. And as far as you're concerned right now, you definitely made the right decision because you're happy with your husband and you love him, and you'll probably be married for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I've had very little regret about that decision, other than just the impact that it had on reputations and disrupting, life.
Right, but as far as you're concerned, the people who are really churchy about it are totally and completely wrong.
Yep. And I even harmonized, my struggles with that theologically. And I was like, I think the problem was that I wasn't listening to God. And I think I knew that I shouldn't have married him but I really struggled to,
reconcile it.
No, I always struggled to listen to myself, because I think I had that idea that I mean, I know you probably won't agree with this necessarily, because I think you're a little bit more liberal. But I really believe that as a woman, I didn't have the final say in like spiritual authority. So I was really honestly looking around to the men in my life to kind of help guide me in that. And I got stuck in that relationship because he told me God told him that it was supposed to happen.
Oh, I see. So you weren't legitimately praying and hearing from God.
No.
He was running the, like, I'm the spiritual head of the household type deal on you.
And I actually remember going through a time where I was like, I called my mom, and she remembers this too. And I was like, I don't think I should be getting married. And she's like, then don't. And I said, but he's heard from God. And because I just didn't know how to parse that one out, I went forward with it.
Yeah, she said, but don't, which is the right.
Yeah,
totally. But he's heard from God. Yeah, so you basically gave him power over you, which wasn't legitimate, spiritual or otherwise. You gave him the power to make decisions. And if you're hearing from God, I know you don't believe in God anymore, but if you're hearing from God, it's you who are hearing from God, not somebody else telling you, And God was going, don't marry that douchebag.
Yeah.
He's a clown. He's a fake. Don't marry him.
I think
was God giving you warning signs?
Well, I think if I had been, if I'm completely honest, the way I see it now is that I had strong intuitions that I was doing the wrong thing.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did. So, but I didn't trust myself.
Because of religion? Because of Christianity had taught you not to trust yourself? Or just because you never learned to trust yourself?
I'd like to think that it's a bit of both. I think I naturally struggle with insecurities, but I think it was really reinforced by different Bible verses and I mean the verses about that the heart is deceitful and lean not on your own understanding, and these are the things that best explained my insecurities. I feel like.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then you go. Take us to the total deconversion. So
total deconversion.
You're still a good girl at this point. You're still good.
Oh, I'm still a good girl.
I'm messing with you. I was going to tell you. What was I going to tell you? It was fun. I forget. It was stupid.
It's
It was
okay.
dumb anyways. Go. Take us to full deconversion. So
Full deconversion was
these are what I would call the seeds of doubt, the seeds of
all of these were seeds up to that point. Somewhere between me embracing the different mindfulness techniques and the therapy and the cognitive behavioral therapy, I also got really into like meditation and guided meditations, and these things were just unbelievably helpful for me. And I got on YouTube and I was watching guided meditations, and I saw one of this person that I had been following his meditations, and they were really great. He had posted a video said, "Why I'm no longer a Christian." And I still remember that day. I still remember that day. And like, I hadn't got into it, atheist YouTube. I had no idea. I clicked on the video and I remember, well, first I'll say my heart sank and I was like, what? People leave Christianity? Like, that's not, you can't. I was kind of like a Romans girl. Like, you can't leave Christianity.
Wow, interesting.
And
go on.
Like if you leave, you were never part of us. And so I clicked on the video, just curiosity.
You saw it and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So you were raised really, raised sheltered and innocent in a lot of ways, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I had non-Christian friends in high school, and I think that brushed up against.
Yeah, but even your town sounds relatively innocent, and it's just different. I grew up right outside of New York City, so no,
definitely wasn't like New York City. No,
I wasn't raised innocent. I mean, I was innocent up to a point because it was still a small town, but there was a lot of stuff that we were exposed to before the age of 17. That just different paradigm, basically.
So
now I'm totally innocent. So
I clicked on the video and I watched the video, and I just remember feeling kind of that. I felt a little bit of shock, and I felt a little bit of disbelief about, like, I was like, that's not possible. Like, that's how I think that does speak to my my bubble that I was in, that I didn't know people actually left. And then I think a lot of it, the next parts, was just the YouTube algorithm. I mean, the next suggested videos, curiosity got the better of me, and I was like, oh, I want to hear more about people who actually leave Christianity. And I think I said to Dan on Objectively Dan, I think 3 or 4 videos later, I stumbled on a Matt Dillahunty video, and I was like, whoa.
The kingpin, the
kingpin.
The atheist maker, atheist maker. He's the when they were asking, I think he's the main economic engine of atheist production. I would say
maybe, yeah.
Well, atheist experience, I have a whole theory about it, so you can watch my videos. I'll explain the videos. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I just hearing, I think the video that I found myself on was that, like, God is an immoral thug. And I just remember being like, I've never heard anybody say that kind of. So anyway, that triggered me to be like, this is like crazy. Like, people are leaving Christianity, and some people had really good points about why they were leaving. And couple that with all of my other experiences about the Christian method didn't seem to work for me for like a productive, happy marriage. The hypocrisy, the control in the missionary group, the blame that was placed on me. I didn't bring this part up very much. The blame that I had felt all the years with my chronic illness and different faith healing stuff that had gone on, and it all kind of just funneled down into these moments where I had the thought, like, what if it's not true? And so then from there, I probably spent about 6 to 8 months just consuming as much as I could. I cast the net wide. I was reading Christian stuff, like apologists, and I was reading tons of like Bart Ehrman. I got really into the textual analysis of the Bible. I tried to really reconstruct what the first Christians were, and then I realized there was probably not as clear of what the first Christians believed. And then I got to one point where I was listening to a lot of rabbis talk, and I became convinced that Christianity was false, but Judaism was true. So then I was looking at Judaism, and then I watched a whole bunch of stuff on, I watched a couple of these New Testament studies and Old Testament studies, and I took probably 300 pages of notes. And then I became convinced that the ancient can't get the word out right now. The ancient Jews, ancient Israelites, rather, that's probably what it should be saying, that they had come out of the Canaanites. And so then I started questioning monotheism in general.
And you're like hungrily devouring this stuff because it's speaking of something. Speaking of something deep, right? I mean, there's a reason why you hungry devour things. It's addressing something that I would say is absolutely essential, that you're maybe trying to keep hidden from yourself for years. Is that fair to say?
What do you mean?
The questions, I don't know. It doesn't seem like
no. I don't think. I honestly, the whole time I was going through that stuff, I had no idea where I would end up at the end of it. And actually, that I would say that whole time that I was doing that research, I was scared. I was really, really scared that it wouldn't be true. I wanted it to be true.
That what, Christy? That you would find out that there wasn't a God in your study?
No, the opposite. I felt like I wanted Christianity to be true. I wanted theism to be true. I wanted deism to be true. I needed, like, I each kind of stone that I unturned was devastating for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Devastating?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I as much as I had experienced things that were maybe not great about in the Christian faith, like these stories I tell you about, I had come to a place, and especially that period 4 years ago, where I had found a faith that I really gave me a lot of like hope and a lot of purpose.
You were comfortable with, and it was relatively. But your husband is still a Christian, correct?
He is, yeah.
Okay, and he's not struggling in his faith at all, right? You're. Cool.
I don't know. I think he won't tell you because he's no, he's comfortable with where he's at. He's not nearly as much of he doesn't go through like as much existential crisis as I do.
Right. He's not a gnawing intellect. He's not like his.
No, he's like the most. He's a happy dude.
Right.
He's willing to discuss these things, but at the end of the night, he's going to sleep just fine. And
right, I think it's not an existential crisis for him. It's just kind of an interesting thing to think about for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, and
I've become like that over the years, but I understand it.
Yeah, and for him, I mean, I think some of his views have changed. Like as we have talked about the different things, like I think maybe his theology on like salvation is a little different now. His theology on the afterlife is a little bit different now. But I mean, even throughout that, like I think he's very open-minded. Like he maybe in the very beginning when I was acting like a jerk, he probably got some defensiveness. But I think I was like, so wait, that was well deserved.
Did you start out as an angry atheist when you were?
No, because I wasn't an atheist. I was an angry deconstructor. By the time I actually looked in the mirror, I had this moment where I looked in the mirror and I was an atheist. I wasn't angry anymore. Like I actually, that was like a moment of release, like a let go from it all. It was the months leading up to that where I was angry. Yeah.
And then by the time you became an atheist, you were like, some sort of acceptance or something. Is this, I'm just asking you your thought process. You were like, no, it's fine. This is true. And I now have peace because I can just accept this as the truth. And now I'm okay. Something like that. Is that what you mean?
No, not really. No, I think it was just like a kind of more of the acceptance of, I probably will never know, and that's fine.
Oh, okay. So you didn't go, there is no God and I'm free.
And
so you're not of the position that there isn't a God. You're of the position that you don't know and there's not enough evidence. So you're going with probably not. Is that right or no?
Yeah, I think I hate the labels because obviously everybody wants to fight about the label. I've put on my Twitter that I'm an agnostic atheist because that seems to be where I get the most representation for people with the other people online for where I sit with it. I think I kind of view it as I don't know whether a God exists, but I lean no.
Right, you lean no. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would the back and forth is like political bickering and actually dogma disputes, which is amazing because they're atheists. But the actual position is that you are is like, you don't think there is a God, you lean no, and so it's more what is generally considered agnostic leaning atheist. How they frame it is like, that's why they're fighting over it, because it's a whole but no, I understand what you mean. Are you like what was did you watch ever any of those John Steingrad deconversion conversations?
I absolutely loved the way he represents it. Like it's my favorite. I've watched
did you
all
know
of his.
him as a did you listen to his
I
music
totally listened to Hawk Nelson grow like
you
not
did no,
oh
my
yeah
God.
yeah so for me it was like it's been kind of awesome watching him.
You're like, hallelujah,
I loved his conversation last week.
Christ. My
yeah
brother
he
not Christian. You
his
identify with everything he
conversation
says.
with Frank Turek the other day was just amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, you gotta actually give me some more exposition on that later on, because I'll watch that, and I'm very curious as to your thought process. So you listened to Hawk Nelson when you were a Christian.
Yeah.
See, I'd never heard of him until he deconverted. I was making fun of that. I was like, Hawk Nelson, say it isn't so, Greg. Like, what?
I actually listened to them back way back when I was like in high school, mostly. I like back when they were kind of in that pop punk scene, because I definitely was part of that in the youth group. So like I actually knew them more as like their younger version. I was aware of, and they were like probably on some sort of bigger playlist of like worship music, because they kind of moved more into like the, worship pop kind of category. But when they were a little bit earlier on, they were like,
what sort of music? Pop punk? What are they kind of like? Are they kind of like Green Day or no? Or like what?
Yeah, I would say so. Green Day and like oh no, I'm gonna forget what they're called.
Paramore. You know Paramore?
Oh yeah. That I was really into like this whole Christian emo scene when I was in high school. It was called.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I dated
I
dated a couple musicians, and like I was super into like that scene, and like so John Steingard talks about being on like Tooth and Nail records. Like I had all the Tooth and Nail albums. Like I had like tons and tons of CDs because I loved that record label.
Wow, that's awesome. I meant to check out his music, and I will listen to that.
He's actually really good.
Hawk Nelson, the band, is really good. That's what you said. You stand by that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I would stand by that.
See. I think John, is this true, John?
As a Christian, and I mean, it's still on my playlist on my Spotify. I was like, I loved Hillsong and Elevation Worship and those kind of those kind
Hillsong
of bands.
I know, because the church that I became a Christian at played all those like open the eyes and that's all from that.
I grew up on that too.
Yeah. So those are like standard. Those are like the canon in most of your Southern California churches. There's like standard type of worship songs that are kind of rock-ish. They're like Eagles, so sort of a little bit like the Eagles. It's good. I like that stuff. As music, it's okay. But okay. So what else was I going to ask you? What else do you want to tell us? Give us more insights. You've poured your heart out for an hour or so. What do you think is most pertinent out of what you've told us thus far?
Oh, that's tough. If you give me like an open airspace, like I can go on these long rants.
Rants about which? About
anything. I still spend a lot of time. I still spend a lot of time reading the Bible and reading. I really love looking at other cultural context, things that were going on, and like how religions develop and how Christianity developed. I spend a great deal of time looking at psychology of it all too. Like I don't have like proper training in that, but I do find it really interesting because I found like I've been a part of some of the psychology in the part where I've actually received the help from it. So I feel like I do believe in it. I do believe in the process of getting proper help that way. So I spend a lot of time reading that kind of stuff too. I don't know. I think maybe
are there any like Christian figures that you're still interested in terms of?
Oh yeah. There's a couple of, you know, I talked to Jonathan Depew on Twitter, and I still listen to a couple.
Yes,
other...
that's who I said. John is my boy. He's
oh yeah.
That's why I was asking if he thinks Hawk Nelson is good, because he has legitimately like
he's
band, like in a band. Yeah, he plays. He's got a bass player personality too.
I spend a lot of time listening to progressive Christians and trying to figure out why they still think it's important. If I can say that without being like offensive.
Right. So your thought process is like, because John doesn't hold to the Bible as literally true, so you're like, okay, I agree with you there. How do you still think it's spiritually true? Is that kind of the question?
I like spend a lot of time listening to progressive Christians, kind of trying to figure out. And like, I know progressive Christian is a terrible label because it's like doesn't nail down anything, but I like listening to people who are non-evangelical Christians now, because I know the evangelical arguments. I've listened to all the apologists, and I feel like I don't have much questions left there.
There's something weird in the background. Is that a kid or something?
That's probably my kid. One of them.
It sounds like they're crying. Sounds like a woo. I don't know.
That's my son singing.
Oh, okay.
Hang on a second.
Beautiful, dear. That's beautiful, dear.
He's in the hallway singing to himself. Okay. My husband's with them, but maybe I'll just go tell them to.
I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who noticed. I don't know if the audience noticed. I can never read the chats when I'm doing this.
I did notice that. I thought it might have been like a dog howling in the background.
I thought it was like a ghost or something. I thought it was somebody outside the car, like crying. I was like, what on earth? I was looking around.
You got a full chat though.
Not that I'm in the car. Is there any good questions yet? Because I don't really want to go to questions yet.
So I'll have them.
Okay. Big names in the chat. John Depew. Any other big names? Yep. Spartan Theology.
John Depew's here. SJ's here.
That's a big name.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm back. That was my son.
Yeah. Okay, so wait, I had a good question actually. What were we just talking about before you left?
We're talking about progressive type. So I just want to throw a couple other names out there before we move on. I listen to a lot of Pete Enns, and God is Great is a great YouTube channel.
You're probably okay with how he reconciles the scriptures, I'm guessing. I haven't really looked into Pete Enns, but
yeah, I think if I was going to become a Christian again, it would probably be that kind of Christian.
Right. But so the question is, do you ever listen to Rob Bell? You might like him.
I've read his books, not his most recent one, but I read, his Love Wins, and I've watched a lot of his videos, and I've listened to his podcast a few times too.
Right. So the question
I never stop consuming things.
So the question is, I think you would say, if you don't still think it's literally true, how are you still justifying that it's spiritually true? Is there a justification for this at all? Is that kind of the question?
I look a lot to like the spiritual rationalizations, and also like these, I guess you would call it like these metaphorical truths, and I just don't feel compelled or convinced by those, I guess, to put it frankly.
Not compelled, did you say?
Yeah, I can totally understand why that would keep someone else maybe. But since it hasn't really manifested for me, I don't think I can like rationalize reason. I don't know. I hate those kind of words because I'm not very philosophically minded, but I don't have a reason unless I can't base my, if I were to come back on someone else's experience. So that's
it would
where
have to
I'm
be
at.
something. It would have to be something where you legitimately thought God was speaking to you.
Yeah.
And did you legitimately, now in the past, this is I'm not doing this to play gotcha. I'm just, did
It's
you
fine.
legitimately at times, I'm pretty sure you know that, but I just want to preface it with that. So the audience knows and everybody, did you legitimately think that God was speaking to you at times? And did you think that you were prompted by the Holy Spirit at different times to do this or that? Do you know what I'm asking? Does that make sense, the question?
Yeah. Yes. I at the time would have said absolutely. Yes.
Okay. And what do you look back now and how do you answer that now?
When I look back now, is that the things that I would have attributed to God or the Holy Spirit were indistinguishable from my own intuition, and or I experienced something similar outside of a Christian setting.
Okay. Now, you know what the still small voice is in Christianity, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you have a still small voice without a God? I mean, I'm thinking the answer is yes. You're getting deeply in touch with like your deepest intuitions of what's right for you, correct? That's how I describe it. Is that something you could do?
Yeah, I think so. And I think like when I look at I think that there's a kind of a naturalist explanation for that psychologically, with like kind of how we develop our intuitions and our morality. I kind of have a dual process kind of view on it, that some stuff is kind of innate in us, and I think it is good to spend time like mindfully tapping into that. And I can't distinguish, what's coming from me and what might be coming from something external. I at this point, I'm convinced that it's all internal.
Right. But you do practice meditation at this point, and you said guided meditation was really helpful, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean,
but
yes, I do. And yes, I think it's helpful.
But there's no ontology associated with, there's no spiritual practice. It's strictly a internal brain chemistry thing, or is there's any ontology to it at all? Was there an ontology that it was associated with and it disassociated
as far as I can see it, I don't see any ontology to it.
Okay, but where did it originate from? Do you know? You might not.
What do you mean by it? Like
the meditation practice, it came out of Hindu practices. Do you know? You might not. Might not be something you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's often based on like Hinduism and Buddhism, and I think that it's probably represented well even in like the Hebrew scriptures and with Jesus and other things in the New Testament. I think that I think people for thousands of years have been noticing the positive benefit of quieting yourself and kind of listening to that.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally understand. You really like John Vervaeke. He's I think he calls himself a non-theist, or he's technically an atheist. He doesn't believe. He probably leans towards almost exactly how you would describe it. But he studies spiritual practice and like the neuroscience of religion and wisdom practices and things like that.
Yeah, I find all that stuff really fascinating.
Yeah, that's why I think you'd be. We interviewed him. You'd be interested in him. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what was the name again?
John Vervaeke. I'll give you the links when we're done. You definitely like him.
Mm-hmm.
Really intense. And there's a couple of Christians that you would like Paul Vanderklay, who's been on my channel, who are like John. You'd find them very. You'd like what they have to say. They're more open-minded, and the value system you'd agree with them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah,
Paul I don't know if you know who this.
I don't feel like I'm not scared to watch anybody or like to have my mind changed about things, and I feel like I constantly am still looking into things, and I still find it all really interesting. And if you have any other like things, I'm always willing to like look into things. I listen to a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds right now.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that sense. I don't think you're actually resistant to whatever you find stirs your curiosity. You're like, okay, I'll check this out.
Yeah.
I'll check that out. Right. Well, that's totally the right way to be. So I don't find you like defensive at all. Are you? I don't think you are. You don't seem it. Maybe when you're on Twitter, you get like a little into atheist mode, probably, but that's
I think I'm human, so of course I have my defensive moments. I get maybe a little bit short-tempered with people who, you know, maybe throw out kind of, I would call it warn apologetics with me. Like,
yeah, they're rough.
Yeah, so
like they're not really engaged with you. They're trying to run a fake script. Here's my, let me
Yeah,
plug in
and
my
like,
argument about Jesus du jour. This is my new deck. This is my new thing.
like, yeah. You start if you get all precepty with me, or like you want to talk about Romans 120 or whatever, like I'm probably gonna, you know, bite back a little bit, but
Right. So you don't think that you are suppressing anything. You think you're totally open-minded to the possibility that God might exist, and
yeah, I think so.
you're
And
checking
like,
things out to the best of your ability, being as honest as you can. Right.
yeah, and I think so. And I think if I was suppressing something, like I would love for somebody to tell me how to stop doing that. But I don't think so. I'm trying to be as honest as I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the good sign is you're on my channel. The atheists who are on my channel are ones who I already thought were honest. Right? I don't bother having them on my channel. If I think they're gonna like do stupid atheist counter apologetics and run dumb arguments, they're dumb arguments.
I mean,
on the atheist side too.
I like to think that like I could probably like play the part of like the angry atheist, and I know what they would probably say, and I could play the part of a street epistemologist in like neutral kind of territory. I could be a fundamentalist Christian in the argument, like, you know, you see the same thing happening over and over again. And I do think that it's time to like maybe
cut through the bull crap,
maybe grow up a little bit.
Right. Cut through the bull crap and have a real conversation. Like ask somebody real questions about their life to find out how they actually arrived at the conclusions they arrived at.
Yeah, and just like stop dehumanizing each other with like the way we talk.
Yeah, I'm totally on board for that. I agree. And yes, everyone on all sides are guilty of running a script and just trying to fakely win an argument or, you know, score points for no particularly good reason.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you and your husband avoid religious conversations at this point? Or
not at all. We talk about things all the time.
Okay. Interesting.
My husband's great. He's like, he is willing to talk about anything. And if we get to a point where we disagree, we're just like, well, like we totally disagree on this point, but like I still love you and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I are like that. We talk. She has very different political views than me, and we don't fight at all. We don't, because
like, I mean,
I understand her thought process. I understand where she's coming from.
And even if I don't agree. Thing there. I think any tension that was maybe had while I was in the process, like, there's obviously a few things that like I won't do. I'm not going to invalidate his experiences, and I'm not going to you know, try. I think a big one is I'm not going to try to make him hold to a doctrine that he doesn't hold to. That was a big one for me kind of in the beginning, because I was kind of still pulling the no true Scotsman, I guess, or no true Christian. So
oh wait, you were running counter apologetics on him, like you think
probably.
I'm gonna burn in hell. It's like, I've never said that. And you're like, yeah, but if you're not a real Christian, unless I actually play that, I'm like, oh my God, go away. That's insane.
I asked him that early on. I'm like, are you worried I'm going to go to hell? And he was like, no. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're not a real Christian.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, yeah, that's really interesting that you caught that. See, that's really honest of you, because there are a couple of atheists who ran that on me on like Twitter, and it was like pulling teeth trying to get them to understand, like, dude, you're not a Christian anymore. You can't say that's not biblical when you don't believe in the Bible.
There's a lot of gatekeeping, I guess, if you would. Like, there's a gatekeeping of all the different categories, and there's a lot of gatekeeping across the aisle still, right? And I think like that's kind of silly.
Well,
I caught myself doing that, and so I had to let that go. And
right, but that's what I mean. That's really good that you caught yourself doing that, because most people would double down if they catch themselves doing that, and that's where like hypocrisy and stupidity is born, because you don't own that you're doing something completely false, you know.
Yeah, and like ultimately, I am at the place where I am because I could only analyze my own experiences. So I can't do that with other people. Like if they want to talk about it, like I can tell them, some of the thoughts that came up for me, and if they want to talk about that, but I can't get inside anyone else's mind and
Well,
talk.
while you would be doing that to your husband, I'm not sure. That's probably just like, just kind of weird, chaotic emotions. But while people were doing it to me, it's just easier to debunk a rigid form of a certain iteration of Christianity. So you can debunk that one easily, and then you pretend that that's everybody, and then you pretend you can't be like, a Christian who uses common sense to reconcile certain things. You know what I mean? So, well, that's not Christianity then. It's
like that's why I think I'm almost like I have like this weird fascination with non-evangelical Christians, because I'm like, as soon as I started accepting that they could be Christian and have a different theology than what I grew up in, and it's like, and now I just find it really interesting. Well, before I would have been like, they're not real Christians.
Right. Do they keep you, like you said, when you were in that one group, they were policing your theology to a certain degree and policing your behavior. And is that's kind of like the fundamentalist thing, or even the, you're trying to make sure everybody adheres to this set of criteria, right? And the only way to do that is to constantly be policing each other, right? Or no? Is that fair to say? Because I wasn't raised Christian at all.
Yeah.
So the other Christians have very little influence on how I became a Christian. We were only really committed members of a church for about a year and a half before that church fell apart. We're members of a church now, but it's on the other side of the valley, and we haven't gone in like 5 months because of coronavirus. And we used to only go like once every 2 weeks or so. So we're not really like hooked in these other Christians. I have other Christians who I'm friends with, but not to the point where we hang out with them a lot and they have any influence on my thought process, unless you're talking about Twitter Christians. Like Stephanie and John, and they're all over the place. And John Buck, who believes in the great whatever, the great, like, who even knows, the great, like, I don't know. Did that make sense what I just said? That there's no, like, my theology was developed by me in prayer without a lot of influence by a church group or a group of people.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, and I think that I got to that place too, but only after I broke away from like the dogmatic and faith of my childhood. So like, I think what I deconstructed from was not fundamentalism necessarily.
It was kind of a lighter, it was almost like a progressive Christianity by the time you deconstructed,
honestly, because like by the time I was really deconverting or deconstructing, is like there was a lot of things that were really not would not have been evangelical type Christianity. So I think like and that for me was like that was my own personal kind of bubble that I had, not bubble, that's a terrible word. That was my own personal framework that I had come to. So, and that was after years and years of being, just like we've talked about, just the different experiences. So I get what you're saying. For me, I kind of did get there a little bit, but I had to break off all the baggage from the other stuff first.
Right. But you went through a lot of different periods in your what you were, and there were different eras even where you were more here, and they a lot of it was guided by externals for the most part until very recently. Like atheism seemed to be generated by you, whether you're right or wrong. It seemed to be from you.
I think
whereas
Whereas
the others were you being guided by I mean, I guess that's part of just growing up in general anyways for a thoughtful person, is you start coming to your own thought process on things and thinking them through and deciding what is you and what isn't, right? I mean, that's a normal part of just
like I think if I look back on like all the different notes I was taking and the different introspection, like the things I was thinking through, that I really do feel like that deep, like that processing was happening like within my own mind, and then I kind of found people who had also gone through that. I won't say I won't say it's completely not influenced though. Like there was still, of course, like it's pretty hard to deconstruct.
Well, let's take a look at like, okay, so why Matt Dillahunty was like a big eureka moment. Why?
Yeah.
Think about it. And
Because I think it's because it was also both Matt Dillahunty and Seth Andrews showed me one thing that I hadn't never seen before. And it was that they weren't afraid of anything. They weren't afraid of Satan. They weren't afraid of some sort of spiritual attack. Does that make sense?
yeah, it makes total sense. That's a great answer.
I had never seen anybody
intellectual honesty unencumbered by fear of consequence. So they were you were seeing people who were afraid to just think what they not afraid to think what they thought, and they wouldn't go there because they were afraid they were gonna wind up in the lake of fire.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah, there's this one speech that Seth Andrews that does where he actually like talks about that and about the fear, and he actually like gets down and kind of jokingly asks Satan to come live in his heart. And I remember literally
Speaking
just
out.
like I was like because I was still so afraid when I was watching that. And then
wow, that's
of
really
course nothing
interesting.
happened, and I was like, wow, that is this all just like some big thing I've been
Right.
told?
Is it all just some elaborate scam that Christians have been running on each other through fear of not asking honest questions? Is that kind of the thought process?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that even has a history. Like there was a who was it? George Bernard Shaw had a speech. It was basically like the dawn of humanism, where he was talking about how there isn't a God and how he is going to now come up with a humanist type of theology. And in this speech, it was in London, and he goes like, if there's a God right now, may he hit me with the bolt of lightning. And actually the auditorium kind of froze. Like,
Yeah.
is he about to get struck dead? Like, wait a minute, because it was still a very religious society. It's like, is he crazy? Like,
yeah, and that shook me up. Like when I saw and first encountered people that were that ballsy, I guess.
Right. So you were attracted to the intellectual fearlessness. You thought that was integrity or honest of them, and that impressed you because did you not allow yourself? It seems to me, just from talking to you, that you are sometimes the type of person who doesn't allow yourself to think some things because you don't want it to. I know I've done that in the past with people. I've noticed that with people, not with ideas, but with
that
people.
You don't want to speak something in case what?
You don't even want to give it life in your head because you're afraid that, like,
that's how I used to be. That
what
was
I thought.
me.
That's what
that would be me as a Christian. It was like there was so much going on. It was like you don't even want to go there because it was so much that could happen. It was so risky. The risk was so high.
Of even starting to entertain those type of thoughts, right?
Yeah.
So so Seth Andrews, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I had to fight against that fear the whole time too, because I kept thinking, even clicking that very first video, I'm like, oh, have I opened up a
gateway to hell or portal to hell inside myself?
Have I given the devil a foothold and stuff like that? Right. Like that stuff was going. I was like sleepless for weeks when I first started looking at this stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. See, that's what I guessed about you, that you're the type of person who would not even like start to entertain a thought process because you're afraid of.
I think there was a lot of like thought stopping, like shutting down things and distracting.
Right. I honestly think that's what all dogmatic people are. They're afraid to entertain something. That's why they're like that. That's my own personal opinion. Like, I'm a really committed Christian. It doesn't seem like I am, but I really honestly am.
No, it seems
but I'm not
like
dogmatic. I'm not dogmatic at all. I don't care what anybody else believes. That has nothing to do with me. Like, I'm not going to gain anything by convincing you of anything. I just want to hear your thought process. You know what I mean? To understand you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think that's my purpose. Is just, and like, I think John Steingard's doing a great job, and I like Notes from Autumn. She's awesome, and Shannon. Yes, she was and all these other people. What's that?
Yes, Notes from Autumn was on my channel. You watched that? Right?
Yeah. Her and I have become friends. I think that I got kind of sick of seeing people misrepresented on the experience of losing your faith, especially obviously from like the apologist side of like
Misrepresenting
I
how?
think
Who's misrepresenting? What do you mean?
misrepresenting what the deconversion process is like, misrepresenting on who we are, and so the only way to like counter that is to put your face out there and show what other people look like who have stepped out, I guess.
Right, and you came on here and tell your story. You were fairly
Yeah.
represented, correct?
I think so.
Okay, that's what we try to do. We try to get to the truth according to the person telling their tale. So, yeah, you and Autumn should come on together. I was going to do with him, Drew, her, and Antibot too. If you guys are up for it,
Sure. I'd love
I
that.
think that'd be fun. All right, cool. How much time, John? Should we start asking questions?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I would like to just take a quick break because I've drank a lot of water.
All right, that's fine.
We'll queue up some
entertain the
questions.
chat.
Now is
Sure.
the part where we're going to destroy you. So get ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
Now that we're all queued up, now that we got a guard down, let's take her out, Johnny.
I'll step away for a second here.
All right, go for it. Let's take her down, Johnny. Did you hear me say that? Uh-oh.
Yeah. All right. We've got quite the full crowd here. We've got, we've got Rachel Inns in chat. We've got Jesse Camping. We've got SJ. We've got Apocalypse here, or John Depew.
John Depew.
Is
Is Hawk Nelson legitimately a good band, John? I haven't actually listened. Are they legitimately punk? Come on.
That's a Christian band, right?
Yeah, Christian punk. Give me a break.
I think I probably listened to some of it since I listened to a lot of Christian music back when I was younger, but
Did you really?
I wouldn't be able to tell. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really know anything about them musically, but I was in the process of starting to watch that Frank Turek, John Steingrad that on his channel. I was in the process of starting to watch that.
The chat's been pretty active.
I find him less sincere than her. I think she's really I thought that was really honest. She was really honest. Erin, I find him not that honest. I kind of find him a little bit of role playing, the basic deconversion, the couple of times I've seen him talk, he runs those fake counter apologetics, at least the ones I've seen. I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe he doesn't. I'll watch the Frank Turek.
Gotcha. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, we've been pretty active chat there. I know there was a discussion earlier about how you can tell she's Canadian from the way that she says boot.
Boot.
A boot.
A boot.
A boot. There's a discussion on divorce within Christianity that was going on earlier. Yeah, I've got a few questions for her. If anybody else has other questions that they want me to pass along to Erin when she gets back, I will keep track of them. All right. Whoop. What are your plans after this, Craig?
Probably just relax at home. I think my wife might actually be going out to dinner. So
without you?
Yeah, she's probably hanging out she hangs out with her friends sometimes.
Gotcha.
I can tag along if I want to, but I don't really. It's a nice little.
You're a
I can be in the
homebody.
apartment by myself.
You like to hang out with the cat.
Yeah, big time. These days, I used to be not, but these days I'm totally I just as soon watch Netflix and relax at home.
We're ready for your questions. I have my backup here in case I get scared.
Did you get your counter apology? Get Matt Dillahunty on the phone and be like, Matt, your God is so fake. You're Sky Fairy. And the key to counter apologetics, Erin, is if I start asking you a question, just go, yeah, the Old Testament endorses slavery. And then you have an out. No, this is good. I'm just playing with you. All right, let's hit her, John. Let's
right.
nail.
First question
nail her
from
to
me
the
is,
wall.
who's your guest that's been in the background the whole time?
What?
Who's my?
Oh, I can't see.
The dog.
The dog. Oh,
Yeah.
This is Maggie.
Maggie.
This This is what I like to say. Like, it's like when an owner looks like their dog a little bit.
She is so cute.
Yeah,
is that the one on your Twitter profile?
Yes. Yeah.
You definitely look like her a lot of bit.
Yeah. She's awesome. She's always like right next to me too on all these any kind of streaming that I've done so far. She's always like right there. So I try to like bring her in every now and then. She's my support person.
Have you done other streams? I knew that you did the story
I was on Seth Andrews' show. I was on Neil 604 Neil the 604 atheist. I was on Atheist Morph. And then I didn't
realize you did Neil. I like Neil.
And Neil's I live really close to Neil too, so I'm like really trying to make us become friends in real life as well.
He's Canadian too? What's with the Canadian atheist movement? What's up with that?
I don't know. It's like we all live not like, I mean,
Shannon is Canadian, Paul is Canadian, Godless Canadian is Canadian.
I like Paul. Paul and I grew up probably 2 hours away from each other. Shannon's on the other side of the country. I'm on the West Coast here, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you listen to my Paula Gia interview?
I want to say yes. I'm pretty sure I have, but I can't quite remember.
I want to say yes, but I
want to say yes because I'm having
not listen to it, so I'm not going to say yes.
I'm having a memory of it, but I've listened to him on quite a few different programs. So
now what? Okay, so what'd you think of being on Seth's channel? That's like a big deal. That's like the biggest atheist in the world.
Yeah, it was a bit shocking for me. I was like, why does he want to talk to me? Like, but it was really great. It was my first experience. It was actually the first thing I did. He was fun to talk to. It ended up being like really fun. And I think that the whole reason why we got connected, Atheist Morph is the Twitter and his channel. He actually kind of connected us because I was posting about these journals that I had, and he was like, I think he tagged Seth Andrews and was like, "You should have her on," and he was like, "Yep, I think so too." So yeah,
because you're thoughtful, and he was like, I mean, it's the same thought process that I wanted to have you on. It's like, okay, this person is honest, and she's thoughtful, and she'll be interesting to listen to. Like when I heard this Seth Andrews, like, I got to get Erin on here.
And I'm like,
he can't have what? Go ahead.
This is actually the first Christian who's asked me to be on their channel, so I was literally looking forward to it.
Yeah, it was awesome. Well, as far as I know, when like I told Notes from Autumn, Stephanie does this sometimes, but I'm the only Christian who has an atheist on the channel to not argue, to just like interview and find out what about them. And, other Christians will probably have your channel to try and run plays on you.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be as like, what was I going? Gosh, why I keep losing my brain doesn't function anymore. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to bring up how that Paula Gia interview was actually really interesting. He talks about how, like, while he was working at Lucasfilm and like him coming out of sort of the young Earth creationist movement and their sort of ideas about dinosaurs. Well worth for anybody that wants to.
His story is fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, his story is very interesting. There's a trajectory in a lot of the atheist fundamentalist to atheist stories that are very similar to my mom, except there was no such thing as like public atheism when my mom would have deconstructed for sure. Very similar idea. She was, poor Italian immigrant, not very well educated, got a scholarship to college because she was the smartest person and she wanted to be a nun when she was younger. So she was really committed to Catholicism, and then started learning and opening her eyes and started questioning, but she didn't deconvert because there was no, like, you didn't turn on Johnny Carson
for it then,
right? There was no Sam Harris. Like if she had turned on Johnny Carson, she'd fall asleep to Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And this was like when she was she became a liberal and she became a feminist activist, but she was still a Catholic, just a cultural Catholic.
Yeah.
But she, if there had been some sort of public face of atheism, like if she turned on Johnny Carson, Sam Harris was on the show, she would have probably been like, yeah, I think religion could be like that too. I agree with some of it. So she might have become an atheist if there was some sort of thing to become at the time. There wasn't. Thank God. Can I say thank God? there wasn't any. So she became a kind of like, half committed Christian, cultural Christian.
Yeah.
Which is basically the only thing in the town I grew up in. It was like, nominally Christian, nominally Roman Catholic. What did you think of? So Seth Andrews. The funny thing about Seth Andrews is so obviously like a radio personality. Actually, him and Stephanie have the same type of broadcast personality because you don't have to ask them anything. You just say like, "How are you doing today?" And they'll go on for 15 minutes. I
will say, yeah, he carried the conversation. Like, so there was no, I was so nervous before that interview, but by the end I was like, he just seamlessly moved from one topic to another.
Right. And I noticed that when I had him on my channels, that I did not necessarily need to be there. I could just say like, so then what happened? And he'll go, oh, I was glad you asked. And he'll go on for 5-10 minutes. Like, that's a natural broadcasting type personality. Stephanie does that too. She'll be chatty and she'll fill up the time. Yeah. I could do that, but if I start doing that with guests, I won't stop. So I have to try to, and shut myself up. Like, I can do that too. I'll talk for 20 minutes. I make videos for 20 minutes and I have to stop myself for 20 minutes because I can go on for 3 hours too. But
that's kind of how I am too. I can, like I said, I can go on and on as well if someone hasn't given me any cues that I should stop talking.
Yeah. I kind of figured you were pretty loquacious on Seth's channel, and you were pretty like easy. You should start a YouTube channel. You'd probably be good at it because you do this very similar thing.
It's in the works. I'm trying. I have actually done the first parts of starting one. Right now I'm just trying to figure out the timing because I do have 2 kids at home and a couple, other responsibilities that keep me from sitting down. And plus I'm just like nervous to like talk to myself. I can talk to other people, but so it's definitely
you can start out with guests.
Yeah, that's true.
You can start out with guests, Notes from Autumn, and people.
I've talked to Autumn a lot about this, and it's definitely something that I'm thinking about. Yeah.
JB started a YouTube channel. JB starts a YouTube channel. Anybody can start a YouTube channel. I'm just kidding. JB's fine. He might not even be in the audience.
Honestly, the biggest thing holding me back is that I just suck at technology, and I don't know how to like.
It's not it. That shouldn't hold you back. I honestly am absolutely abysmal. You could not possibly be worse than me. That's why my videos suck, because that's the only type of video I can make.
My husband is helping me though. He did just buy me a mic, and he's helped me set it up, and I'm working on lighting and that sort of thing. So just one step at a time, I'm like getting set up, and it'll be a group effort with myself and my husband and other people who have graciously given me some advice.
Yeah, well, I'll look for it. I'm guessing you'll have a YouTube channel by a year, because you've been moving pretty fast. You just started your Twitter feed, and you're already pretty well known within the atheist community, right? I mean, you're pretty much a known entity at this point.
I don't know how that happened, but I would somewhat agree. I think I've kind of forced my way into the scene.
Yeah, well, because a lot of this stuff that you're saying, people resonate with. That's a lot of why it happened, because you're just telling your story and people immediately identify with some of the things you say. Huge chunk of the atheist community are former Christians. I would say more than half.
I think so too.
Maybe 60%, former fundamentalists or something like this. Huge chunk. The only one I can think of who isn't is Renee. Mm-hmm. Other than that, the German atheist. Other than that, almost everybody else, and maybe Godless Mom. I forget it. She might have said that.
I've met a couple. Actually, speaking to lifelong atheists was a big part of my process as well. Like discussing with people who had never had the fear of hell or fear of the rapture or that sort of thing. Again, just speaking to people who don't live in fear was a big part of my my process. So like I didn't start on Twitter. I started on Reddit, and I was also on Instagram a little bit, even though I don't have it all connected. And I made a few friends on there, which I ended up doing some video chats, like group video chats with, and a couple of the people in that group were lifelong atheists or agnostics. And it was just like you pointed out, like I grew up in a Christian community, and I've kind of always been surrounded by some sort of Christian. So to talk to people who were they found my story like crazy because they're like, you believed what?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that for me was also kind of shocking in a good way, because I was like, I kind of I looked at that being, I guess I did envy them a little bit that they were not worried about things that I was worried about.
Right. Well, I mean, I was raised nominally Roman Catholic, and I don't think I started thinking about hell till I was 24 years old.
Yeah.
Like, I never really thought about it before that. I was mostly called myself an agnostic or a non through most of high school and college. And then I started getting really, when I went to my first time in rehab, I started getting really into like Tao Te Ching, like really spiritual things, and started searching for God. That's when I started thinking about hell, somewhere in my early 20s. But prior to that, I didn't even necessarily think about it at all in terms of, I mean, vaguely, but not,
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's not necessarily a completely organic thought process.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. The fear of hell was something that was taught to me as a child. I mean, I do identify with like the religious trauma syndrome. Like I have been to counseling to kind of work through some of the things that were actually traumatizing for me. The realization of that being traumatic happened after I deconverted, more in retrospect when I started dealing with the long-term consequences of holding some of those beliefs for so long. So
Somebody actually taught you as a child, like somebody said to you, make sure you don't do X or you're going to go wind up burning in hell.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It was also just preached about every Sunday morning. So, yeah, I
had an operating theory on one of my videos that the hellfire and damnation sermon is a bit of a myth at this point, that it doesn't really exist. It's a real reality.
Well. It's alive and well, and in your common churches. I always had the awareness of hell. I had seen lots of, I had heard and seen a lot of different presentations of it by the time I was 5. And then when I was about 7 or so, my church actually played what I like to call a Christian horror film, The Thief in the Night. So then I developed a fear around the rapture as well. So those things were all presented to me before I was even like 8 years old.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Now put your Christian hat on, pretend you're a Christian for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Who do you think is the more likely Antichrist, Obama or Trump? Remember the Antichrist got to be deceptive.
Well, my dad thinks it's Bill Gates.
Oh, that's a good call. That's probably true, actually.
I've actually read an article one time with somebody linking a lot of strangely weird things to Trump. But I also think that is not very biblical to think that the Antichrist is going to be one person. I think that is.
You think it's going to be a whole system and that's like a few Antichrists or something?
No, I think it's just a total misunderstanding of what Paul and his followers later on envisioned as what the spirit of Antichrist was.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
John,
I mean, technically, I'm an Antichrist now because I don't affirm the bodily resurrection of Jesus. That he came in the flesh and he was raised, physically from the dead. I don't affirm that, so I'm an Antichrist.
Well, the spirit of Antichrist. That's from you're talking about from 1 John, right?
And I think in 1 Thessalonians, and yeah. No, I think the whole idea that a single person was going to be the Antichrist is more a recent phenomenon than biblical. But.
That's an interesting thought process. We'd have to consult with our biblical scholar to fully parse that out. Are there any other audience questions, John?
Yeah. There's more of a comment from John Depew, sort of sharing some mutual love for the band Emery.
Oh my gosh, yeah, Emery. My husband's favorite band was Emery.
What are they? Christian punk?
It's like a
Christian pop?
It's like a Christian screamo band.
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
So like Christian My Chemical Romance or something like that?
Yeah. Probably. Yeah, that's probably a decent enough
My
category for that.
Transubstantiated Romance. All right. There's a comment
Probably
from
more like under oath. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
from SJ. She sort of giving a recommendation. If you like Christian progressive sort of channels, you might like Randall Rouser. We actually had Randall Rouser on.
Yeah, I've actually interacted with Randall Rouser. I've watched all of his videos on YouTube. I've watched a lot of his debates that he's done as well. I find him a little too heady for me. I feel like a lot of times he doesn't talk to an average person. He wants to argue with the philosophical atheist, but I do think that he's also quite charitable to people who
don't share his beliefs.
Yeah, I think that he actually affirms that there are honest unbelievers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that he pushes back against both sides, because he'll like to push back against bad arguments from Christians.
Yeah, I mean he's an apologist, and he still manages to misrepresent how I feel as an atheist, I guess, on Twitter enough times. But I also think that he's valid for making those, because there's a lot of people that are acting that way. So.
Well, there's definitely different categories of atheists. Like honestly, the reason you're on my channel is because I already decided that you were one of the honest people, the honest atheist who was going to have a real conversation. I thought you were just going to honestly, if I like Drew or objectively Dan, they don't play the same games that a lot of the other, know, what I call the douchebag atheists do, when they're just like trying to bust your chops and like debunk, dismiss, discredit you. It's not even worth talking to them. You're like, God.
Yeah, I still have I have no comment on that, actually, I guess.
You still have what? You still have your axe to grind against
I will say there are times that I hear them, and I'm just I feel it. I'm like, give it to them. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't think that that's necessarily useful in all conversations.
Oh, I see. Sometimes you're cheering them on. See, John?
Sometimes.
See? Yeah, I knew it.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, don't let them get away with that. But at the same time, there's different kinds of conversations. There's just different types, different time and places for different kinds of dialogue. So.
Right. So, but you were definitely most struck by Matt Dillahunty, and you said because. Go ahead.
No, yes and no. I mean, Matt was the one who shook that one of those first stones loose, maybe. I spent a lot of time. I did watch a lot of the call-in shows. I probably watched all of Apologia, and Prophet Azad was a big one for me, because he came from the same kind of denominational background, and I feel like his insights are very aligned with my experience. And then Drew and Cosmic Skeptic for some stuff. Cosmic Skeptic was probably the one who made me realize that I was an atheist. So I mean, but it goes far and wide, because it's like YouTube, but then there's also all these podcasts that I was listening to. Plus, I've got a whole bookshelf of books that I read and I continue to read.
But what's interesting about the names you cited, and this is the actual people who you got in the process of, who got you into the process of deconversion, is that all the names you cited, or there's only 2 or 3 that I don't actually personally know and haven't talked to on my channel. So it's not like it's I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's like YouTube is really, really good opportunity to get somewhere quickly, because
I mean, I spent a lot of time on channels that I don't watch as much anymore, but I mean, I feel like I still did watch a ton of very aggressive atheist channels, because I was just looking through all. But then I think the ones that I would like to promote are the ones that I mentioned, and the ones that I continue to watch.
Right.
Because I think that they're doing it right.
Who are the aggressive ones?
I'm not going to go down there.
Oh, okay. What else we got, John? Anything else?
Yeah, we're coming up on 2 hours. Do you have enough time, Erin, for one more question?
Yeah, maybe one more question.
All right. This is a question from Blaster Master 80. if Erin could take a time machine and talk to her past self, what would she say to herself then?
What age?
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Don't get married.
Yeah, I guess if
No.
you have the time machine, you get to choose what age you get to go back to.
I think if I could go back and talk to my younger self, if I could somehow communicate to her that she could trust herself, I think that would have changed a few things, but it also would have been more a better mindset to have lived my 20s in. And I think it would have avoided some of the pitfalls that I fell into, both with like my religious stance and then also just personal stuff too. Just that I have some good intuitions and that I can trust myself more than I was told I could.
Good advice. Yeah. All right, Craig, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, Erin, did you want to tie it all in a nice little package?
That was my nice little package.
Oh, that was go back and tell my okay.
I don't know. I have a Twitter. I might start a YouTube channel one day.
We'll start a YouTube channel.
I don't know. Keep having good conversations.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So with that, you guys have heard it here live. We had Erin, the up and coming new star of the atheist community, tell her story about her deconversion. And you heard it here first. Remember, what should my tagline be, John? Remember, don't do it unless.
Remember, always
Craig
remember your tagline.
Remember, always remember. Don't try to improvise a tagline when you're starting to get tired on a Saturday because you'll look like an idiot. How about that?
That's a good motto to live by. Yeah.
Yes. And go watch that Matt Dillahunty. I got to ask the people in the audience, Erin too, go watch that Matt Dillahunty, Dr. Howard Reskin debate, because I really think that could be an interesting debate. This guy's well-versed in Hindu epistemology. And he's a philosopher, so it could be really interesting.
Did you say Hindu?
He's a Hindu.
Is he a Hindu precept?
Did you see I had Ariana on my channel like 2 weeks ago, a Hindu?
I'm not sure, but I have listened to Hindu like presuppositional stuff.
He's
and it's
not,
pretty interesting.
I don't think he's a precept, but
okay.
This guy's, he's actually, I've listened to a couple of his lectures, really sharp, and he's got a good grounding in epistemology. And Hindu epistemology is a little bit of a variation, but there's a lot of similar things. So it could be a really interesting conversation. So I say go check it out. That's what I'm definitely going to do.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go, kids. And with that, the mass is ended. Go in peace. Amen. Take us home, Johnny.
Yep. Yeah, we're off.